Obviously, economic growth is extremely important. I mean, maybe, raising people out of poverty is the role of an economist. It's always been my belief. What motivated me in economics still motivates me in economics. Now, as one thinks about economic growth, as Eddie said, there are a number of factors that are involved. Human capital, though, is extremely important. If you do any simple calculation of the importance of different forms of capital, just sort of an accounting calculation, human capital by far dominates. I mean, it's maybe 75% of all type capital, doing it on a cost basis or on a benefit basis. I don't care which method you take. Of course, they're all important, but in terms of sheer magnitude, human capital is of tremendous importance. Now, it's also important in the growth process, because particularly modern growth is basically information-based, knowledge-based, and that's what human capital deals with: how people acquire and produce knowledge, and how that then spreads through a system, an economic system, into the economy. So it's hard to separate the role of human capital in economic growth from the role of markets and the role of government and a variety of other forces. They interact a lot. But certainly in that interaction, if you don't give a lot of attention to human capital, you're in a lot of trouble. Now, Eddie's immediate question was, well, how are we faring in human capital? And then my first thing occurred to me is, who's the we? Who is the we? Do we mean the United States? Do we mean China? Do we mean other parts of the world? If we look at it from the world perspective, there's tremendous investment in human capital that's been going on. You take some of the data sources that have calculated the enrollments and the stock of human capital since 1970. In much of the world, that's been booming, absolutely booming. The U.S. is falling behind. So if we take as the we, the U.S., yes, is falling behind to some extent in higher education and tertiary education, at least in terms of fraction of young people who are completing this education. But if you look at it from a broader perspective, I think the world has recognized that human capital is one of the crucial ingredients in the growth process. And within that human capital, of course, education is an important part of the process. Usually, human capital is identified with education, mainly because we don't have such good data on on-the-job training and other types of important human capital that are really important, but we can't measure them as well. Everybody can measure years of schooling, and you can take any country in the world and you can measure years of schooling. Maybe the measurement isn't so accurate as in some other country, but you can measure it. It's a poor measure. It's the best we have, so we deal with that a lot. But it's a much broader concept than just looking at years of schooling when we talk about human capital. Now, if you mean, Eddie, how is the U.S. faring? Is that what you meant in particular? How is the U.S. faring? Let me come to that. Not that great. Not that great would be my answer. And qualified, let me explain what I mean by not that great. If you look at the fraction of people who graduate secondary school, until very recently that was stable at about 70 to 75%. Depends on what data you look at. It's grown a little somewhat in more recent years. That's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace, that such a large fraction of Americans should not be completing secondary school in an environment, that's the second point I want to make, in an environment when, particularly in the United States, where the rate of return on education has risen so much since 1980. Return on college education has gone, let's say, in 1979, the premium to the average four-year college graduate over the average high school graduate was about 40%. They earn 40% more. Now it's closer to 80%. Unprecedented increase. You look at a premium for people who post-college education, no matter MBAs, or whatever it may be, masters in other fields, PhDs and so on, it's risen by even more. So a tremendous increase in returns, particularly at that level, okay? And therefore, the first challenge is, well, why aren't more people finishing high school? The second challenge is, why aren't more people who do finish high school going on for higher education? We ranked, in 1980, coming back to that year, we ranked third or so in the world in the fraction of young people who had finished the equivalent of 4 years of school. It's hard to compare across different types of educational systems. Let's take that as approximately the right number. Today we rank about 15th to 16th. And where's the major problem? The major problem is young American men are not finishing 4 years of college in sufficient numbers. Many of them are starting and are dropping out. In 1980, to come back again, women dropped out of college at much, much higher rates than men. Today, not completely reversed, but men drop out of college at significantly higher rates than women do. Women finish, they have almost 60% of all the 4-year degrees, 60% of master's degrees, more than 50% of PhD degrees in the United States. So the big problem is men. Okay, that's where they're the weakest sex from the point of view of education now. And that's not only in the United States, that's almost worldwide. Certainly worldwide, all the rich countries. It's occurring in China, it's occurring in Iran, where my wife is from. It's occurring in a lot of other countries that are not developed countries by any stretch of the name. Now why? Why is that happening? That's a much harder question, of course, why it's happening. Why are we not so many people not graduating from secondary school? Let's say if we graduate a lot more from secondary school, we would get a lot more going to high school, and more boys drop out of secondary school than girls by a considerable margin, actually. The question is, why is that happening? Well, that's a frontier research question, but I'll give you my 3 or 4 reasons that I think have been important. I mean, I don't know if you want me to take so long on this question. I can talk about it for 4 hours if you want, because this topic is interesting a lot. But I'll try to keep it down to 2 hours. We don't have a lot of time. I would say I have four factors or so. Number one, the family, the deterioration of the family. Now, I worked a lot on the economics of the family. You know, family economics, the family economies are generally sort of push the family to one side as being unimportant. But it's absolutely crucial in a lot of areas, and I think it's crucial in the area of education. And you just see it in so much data that if you don't have an intact family, if you don't have parents who care that much about the kids, or don't have the time for the kids just don't do as well in the area. Yeah, there's some great kids who manage to overcome tremendous obstacles. You don't want life to be an obstacle course and just placing obstacles. Some people will get over it. You want to make it smoother. So the deterioration of family, mainly in lower income families, minority groups, and so on. That's your number one problem. A second important problem that I would say would be in the trying to give them some order that may not be exactly in the order of importance I would attach to it. I believe you need more competition in the educational system, so I've been a strong supporter of charter and vouchers. I don't believe it's a magic wand that will solve our education problems, as some voucher supporters believe. And I have some difference with my teacher, close friend, and to me, one of the great economists of all time, Milton Friedman, on exactly who should be getting vouchers. But I do believe charter schools and vouchers, to give more competition to the public school system, it is extremely important. A third factor I would mention would be the pay of teachers. I don't believe teachers as a group are underpaid. I do believe good teachers are significantly underpaid, and we have now recent research that is showing. I use showing in quote because you don't want to be too convinced until you see a lot of studies, and only a couple of studies now. The good teachers seem to have a really significant influence on the performance of their students. I know if I look back at my educational career, I had 2 really good teachers in high school. A teacher of English who led me to appreciate poetry and literature, Fortunately, she would say I didn't follow it up, but I did appreciate it, and I really liked it. And I had a math teacher who really was excited about math, and it taught me, both teachers taught me one thing: the basic ingredient of a good teacher is a teacher who loves his subject or her subject, and who teaches it with enthusiasm. And we don't pay those teachers well enough. We don't attract such teachers well enough. So should we pay good teachers more, fire bad teachers more quickly? Maybe the mean salary would be unchanged. We have more inequality in the pay of teachers. I think we would have a much better educational structure. There may be a few other factors, but let me stop at that point.